You're listening to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science, a Cleveland Browns podcast, a show where a philosopher and a rocket scientist try to make sense of the Cleveland Browns. The Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science podcast is a part of the Fanatical Elves podcast network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Elliot, Kennel, and Joel Cade.
Hi, and welcome to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science. He is the left guard, Dr. Joel Cade, philosophy professor at the left guard. I'm the Village Elliot at TH Village Elliot. Together, we hope to offer unique perspectives on the hardest game in the universe, other than nuclear war, I guess, NFL football, and the strangest team to ever attempt to play it, the Cleveland Browns. We do not claim to be the best analysts in the land, nor do we claim to follow the best team in football, but we are absolutely unique. Joel really is a PhD in philosophy, and I really am a former Air Force specialist in space power and propulsion at beautiful Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, home of the deadliest fighting force in the world. Well, today we're going to talk about what we learned about the Cleveland Browns from the draft. You all know who the Browns picked, and we won't belabor the ins and outs of their skills that much. But we are going to talk about what it implies about what the Browns are doing and what their master plan is going forward, what it says about their offensive philosophy. We're also going to talk about the quarterback situation for the Browns and how it compares to one of their chief rivals, the Baltimore Ravens, the big, bad Baltimore Ravens, and how the Browns are gambling on Deshaun Watson. But Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, is gambling almost equally as much on Lamar Jackson. And how does that compare? And then we'll get into the draft and some of the interesting aspects of the draft that Joel and I picked up on and we'll share with you as we go on. Let's talk about the quarterback situation, Joel. Which quarterback is overpaid and why? And how are we going to look at this situation? The buzz is that Deshaun Watson is vastly overpaid and not worth the money. And depending on how you look at it, you could argue either side of that, I suppose. And we could say the same thing about Lamar Jackson.
I'm going to jump, Elliot. I just think Lamar Jackson's overpaid.
Jump in.
Lamar Jackson's overpaid. You know, he held out for all that time to get those guaranteed dollars and get that highest annual salary, which, Elliot, you know as much as I do, the highest annual value for your contract means absolutely nothing in the NFL. Absolutely nothing. So you can have a 5-year, $260 million contract, make $5 million more over 5 years, a.k.a. $1 million more a year than Jalen Hurts, and the annual value doesn't really matter. I mean, is it really all that different? The guaranteed dollars are what's important. That's what the team has to pay you, and he's not making but $5 million more than Jalen Hurts. So if you're Lamar Jackson and you've held out for all this time, what did you actually win? Not much. Not much. So I think the Ravens are taking a gamble given that they're changing the entire offense. I've never heard of a team have the same quarterback and go from one drastically run-centered offense to a equally dramatic pass-centered offense over the course of one offseason. It's insane.
Well, you know, the Ravens kind of remind me of the Cleveland Browns in that they're sort of like Jekyll and Hyde, where the Ravens at 1 year they're saying, you know, we're going to have this run-based offense that's totally unlike any other NFL offense. We're going to run the ball, and we don't care whether it's out of sync with what the rest of the NFL does. We're going to be the outlier. And then they say, you know what? We're going to change everything, and we're going to have not Deshaun Watson. We're going to have Lamar Jackson become a pocket passer. We're going to change gears, and we're going to have a pocket passer offense with Lamar Jackson becoming the pocket passer. And they switch back and forth like that. And I think it's crazy. But
I don't think they're really gambling on him being a pocket passer. They're bringing in Todd Monken, and you guys, Browns fans, remember Todd Monken from
oh
the
my,
Baker Mayfield days, right? The only time that Baker Mayfield was actually any decent as a quarterback was when Todd Monken was around, and they ran this air raid style offense. And not to get too much into too much nitty gritty, but the air raid style offense is like passing offense for dummies. Instead of reading defenses, you're reading offensive players. You see what the offensive player is doing, and then you react to what they're doing. The quarterback watches the receiver, watches where they get open, and then delivers them the ball. That's what the Ravens are going toward. So if you have this kind of like crib sheet cheat run game, a lot of read option kind of runs, you've kind of got the same thing going on offense with the crib sheet cheat offense that, the Cardinals ran with Kyler Murray for all those years. Not much success for them in Arizona. Now they're going to try it in Baltimore.
Well, you know what, though? Let me lay this on you. If you look at the resources that the Ravens spent on the draft on wide receivers in recent seasons, they drafted a whole bunch of wide receivers. In 2021, Rashad Bateman in the first round. Then they drafted Tylan Wallace in the fourth round that same season. They drafted Devin Duvernay, who I really love, by the way, and in 2020 in the third round. They drafted James Proche in 2020 in the sixth round. They drafted Marquise Brown in 2019 in the first round. And they drafted Miles Boykin in 2019 in the third round. So they were drafting first-round wide receivers like crazy.
And I'm sure Mel Kiper gave him an A+ in every draft.
Yeah, they did.
And then you have to ask yourself, if they got all these A+ drafts, why do they keep drafting wide receivers?
Yeah, and then they were trading away their stud offensive linemen, remember, in order to bring in more wide receiving help in the form of free agents. They drafted Sammy Watson or signed Sammy Watson as a free agent, and they did stuff like that. And then more recently, they turned that around and they decided, we really shouldn't do that. Why don't we instead start drafting offensive linemen again? And so they're kind of a Jekyll and Hyde kind of personality that way. And
I think they're trying to transition to a passing offense because they realize that a couple things, and I think they're taking a big chance with Lamar Jackson for this reason. Everyone saw Lamar Jackson play in a pro-style offense in college, and pretty much everyone wanted him to play wide receiver after watching him do that. Okay, so the Ravens drafted him, and they said, let's find a gadget offense that is countercultural to the NFL, and they ran it for 4 years. Why is 4 years important? Because 4 years is what it takes for every team to see every other team in the NFL. Between the way the schedules are run, the way the NFC plays against the AFC, now every team has seen it. And in that 4 years, the NFL has caught up to Lamar Jackson's speed. Now everyone has somebody not as dynamic as Lamar Jackson, but someone who can run fast as a quarterback. Teams that want to do that kind of stuff. So the other teams, namely the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, they have to all adjust to this, and they now have smaller, faster linebackers who can chase down Lamar Jackson. So that running style offense, it's done. They know it's done. So now they've got to do something else. But they have a quarterback that they're not confident in that can sit back in the pocket, and throw a pro-style offense. So you do the next best thing. You get as many wide receivers as you can, and you run an air raid offense out there, and you hope that the receivers have enough talent to beat the corners to get open so Lamar Jackson can throw them the ball. Because you're not scheming them open in this system. You're asking receivers, to beat corners one-on-one and get open.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. I used to think that the Ravens drafted the best year after year after year. I no longer feel that way.
You're not drinking the Mel Kiper Kool-Aid right now?
I'm not drinking the Eric DaCosta Kool-Aid right now. I'm more intimidated by the Bengals and the Steelers at this point than the Ravens. But before we leave that topic, I would like to make a prediction that we don't know at press time what Lamar Jackson's cap hit is going to be. We do know that Deshaun Watson, I think he's like $18 million this season, which is very reasonable, somewhere like in the middle of the pack in terms of the amount of money that the Browns are getting cap hit for. He's not getting paid $50 million cap hit this season. Correct. They will have to pay something down the road. They have the option potentially to restructure his contract again next season. As long as he continues to have good years and everybody's happy, it's all good. They can keep on extending him and defer the bills another year down the road. Eventually they have to pay, but it may not be for quite some time because he's still a young man. But I would venture to say that Lamar Jackson also, despite his so-called highest contract in the NFL, is going to have a first-year discount, and it'll probably come in at about the NFL average for the first year, and it'll go up from there. Right. But the first year this season, they're not going to be constrained by the quarterback's salary. It's going to be very reasonable. We don't know what it is.
Before the extension, they were looking at a $32 million cap hit because of the
that really hurts if you have to
because of the tag, right?
Yeah.
So they were eager to get him out of the tag, and I'm sure he was eager to save face after the NFL owners, let's just call it what it is, successfully colluded against the quarterback market and prevented fully guaranteed contracts. But I don't know. I think if you're talking about gambling on success, I think another topic you brought up there was this investment in wide receivers. You see a lot of teams just trying to load up on wide receivers. The Bengals, as you mentioned, were really the first team to start doing this in the AFC North when they had a couple good wide receivers and a good wide receiver room, and then they went after Jamar Chase, making their wide receiver room a spectacular room. You saw this with the Arizona Cardinals when they went to that air raid offense. They just started to try to load up on wide receivers and see what they can do. Just make it all straight passing. So the Browns, I think, are starting to come down this road. At least they're throwing a lot of resources at that wide receiver room at the same time that, all the other teams are starting to do that. Now that they think, okay, we've got a quarterback who can play from the pocket, who can run RPOs, who can hit wide receivers down the field accurately. Let's throw as many wide receivers at it as we can. So what do you think, Elliot? Are they going after receivers? Do you think that's the trend?
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing from this draft is that the Browns have decided that they are going to go all out to provide Deshaun Watson a pass-friendly offense, or they're going to die trying. They always say that, we're going to draft the best player available, no matter what position he plays. And that's a total lie. And the reason is that you always have the option to trade up or trade down. So that, for example, let's say that you have a all-pro center, and it turns out that the best player available when it's your turn is a center. Well, okay, so draft out of that position and then draft somebody else when it's your turn the next time. So you have control over that. The Browns decided that they were going to make a high-risk selection, draft a wide receiver, which they did. And they also, by the way, traded draft picks in order that they could trade for Elijah Moore from the New York Jets. So he's essentially a top draft pick, given that the Browns did not have a number one draft pick this season. So they came away with...
Let me say something philosophically here. I mean, let's talk about the philosophy of putting together a wide receiver room. Okay, I think it's a myth to think that wide receivers are all built the same and they're all doing the same thing. They're not. there are multiple roles in a wide receiver room for what they should be doing. You have the reliable route runner that can always get open, your number one guy who can have some speed, but your number one doesn't always have to have speed. They have to be the first option. We've got that guy, right? Then you have to have the possession guy. The guy, when you need a first down, they have the sure hands. This is who you throw it to. We have that guy, right? We also need a role, or the team needs a role, of a guy who's just really, really fast and can just run down the field, and teams have to respect the fact that they're on the field and they can go deep. Ideally, you would have two of these people, ideally, because then you could threaten both sides of the field and teams can't stack up defensive backs on one side of the field to deal with the threat while you leave the possession receivers on the other side. So I think what the Browns are trying to do is construct a complete wide receiver room. You have your number one. You have your possession guy. You're getting Elijah Moore, who's one of your speed guys. You've got Anthony Schwartz, who's a speed guy. You can get Marquise Goodwin out there, who's historically been a speed guy. Now he's 32, I believe, and he's probably slowing down, so you can't throw him out there full time. He's going to have to be a third, fourth, maybe a fifth option. But when he's on the field, he's going to command the respect of the defense. And then you come back to Cedric Tillman here. He's a big body guy with some speed that runs some good routes. You know, he's another big bodied possession kind of guy, although he has some speed and he has some good route running ability. So I think there's a sense where you need to have a complete wide receiver room. And I think the Browns are trying to do that.
Yeah, I think that's so. They're drafting. They really did overdraft wide receivers. There's not enough room on a 53-player roster to accommodate all these guys. So I think that you are going to see them cut some wide receivers that have guaranteed money on their contract. They're going to try to retain them on the practice squad, but they may not be able to. They may wind up signing with some other teams. I think they're willing to accept that. But one way or the other, they're wanting to wind up with 6 or 7 very talented wide receivers on the roster. In other words, they're being very aggressive about seeking out the talent. Right. They're willing to bleed a little bit financially in order to obtain those wide receivers.
Yeah, because that's kind of where it's going in the NFL right now. Yeah. The teams that have a quarterback need to have the threats and the options to succeed. Well, it's a time, Elliot, where we got to take a small break here, but after the break, we'll come back and we'll continue our wide receiver discussion. Plus, I believe we got a letter in the mail, so I'm going to have to check that out, see what that's about. Maybe we'll hit that up after the break. All right? And we're back from the break here. Elliot, did you want to continue talking about the wide receiver room?
Why don't you read some of our fan letters? I think that might be nice.
All right. So it looks like we got a letter from Lamar Jackson's agent.
Huh.
Lamar Jackson's agent says, "Dear Joel and Elliot, how dare you defame my client Lamar Jackson with your ignorant prattle about contracts? You obviously know nothing about contracts and salary caps. As Lamar Jackson's agent, I can assure you that his demands have long been reasonable and very modest, especially given the fact that his skill set corresponds to the greatest of all time. Accordingly, I am proud to represent Lamar Jackson in his complex financial negotiations, which I am sure cannot interest your feeble brains. Yours truly, Lamar Jackson."
Oof, that was really rough. But wait a minute. But it was signed by Lamar Jackson, but he's representing Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson has decided to represent himself in the NFL.
Okay, so
here's Jackson. I'm thinking this is where Lamar Jackson acts as an agent in his client's best interest, which is him. So he's simultaneously acting as an agent in his own best interest.
Okay, so that really makes him, they say he's a dual threat because he can run and he can pass, but he's really then a triple threat because he can run, pass, and negotiate.
Or he's a dual threat on the field and a dual financial threat off the field. I mean, do you
What?
think Lamar Jackson pays his agent 10%, 5%, whatever it is?
Well, how would he do that?
I don't know, but on the one hand, he's acting as capacity of agent, and on the other hand, he's acting in his own capacity. I just wonder if he pays his agent.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems like it might violate. There's very strict rules about how much you can pay your agent. So if he's getting paid the whole thing, I think that's a conflict of interest. I don't get it.
These
Well,
Ravens, man, I don't understand these Ravens people at all. But hey, thank you, Lamar Jackson, for writing in to protect your client, Lamar Jackson. And if you would choose to give us some education on the salary cap, I'm more than willing to listen.
Do you have any other letters you can read that make a little more sense?
We did. We got a letter apparently from Will Levis's girlfriend, Gia Duddy. Is that her name? Gia Duddy?
That's her name. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Read that one.
Dear Joel and Elliot, how dare you guys make fun of my boyfriend? You are just jealous because you can't play football worth of crap and he can. Also, because of the draft, I got 120,000 Twitter followers. How many of you got? See ya in Tennessee, suckers. Ciao, darlings. Gia Duddy.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I've seen pictures of Gia Duddy. It doesn't surprise me one little tiny bit that she got 120,000 Twitter followers. I don't have a rebuttal.
I am so far out of the social game that I have no idea who this is, but I do know that our fellow podcaster Steve was telling us that there's a lot of woohoo girls down there in Tennessee that they show up to Nashville for the weddings, the bachelorette parties, and they go down the street yelling woohoo. So I'm wondering if she's a woohoo girl.
Well, I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say
she's
that.
Not a woohoo girl?
No, she's far beyond that. Trust me.
Okay, well, I want to look this person up.
She's what is known as an influencer in her own right, and even if she was not Will Levis's girlfriend, she would be famous in her own right. So, yeah,
okay.
she's.
And I haven't heard one bit about who this is. So apparently, I'm the one that isn't with the times.
Yeah, you're. What can I tell you? You're getting old. But young people.
I tell you, when I was young, I didn't know what was going on TV or music either. So I don't.
It's because you were studying philosophy. So.
I was too busy hanging out with Plato and Socrates and crap. So
yeah, philosophy and football.
What else we got on the agenda today, Elliot?
Well, okay. I did want to talk about, the risk factor of these wide receivers is that, they're not going for the easy
We're talking about the Browns wide receivers, correct?
Yeah, Browns
wide just to catch us back up.
Yeah, we're not talking about guys that can easily get a few yards. They'd rather take several shots at getting a star rather than one sure thing that's going to be a so-so wide receiver and maybe get 500 yards and, not really be outstanding. Mm-hmm. I did have a graphic that I wanted to present on. Actually, this is kind of a criticism that I'm not a big advocate of speed for the AFC North because I think it's much more important to be able to catch the ball in a snowstorm rather than be able to run real fast. You have to catch the ball before you can run. And let me see if I can share.
Once you get in the playoffs, though, man, you're going to have to be able to catch the ball and run.
We're going to have the home field advantage. We're going to catch it in the
Even
snow.
Then, you're going to have to catch the ball and run.
Yeah, run in the snow, though.
I mean, it's like baseball when they have those home run hitters. Every person's a home run hitter. You make one mistake and you got to take advantage of it. So that's what the wide receivers are. You beat the defense once and catch the ball and run it for a touchdown. That might be the only time you scored in the whole game.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to share some stats. Am I sharing?
You're up, man. Might want to start the slideshow on that one, though.
Okay.
For those of you who are listening, the Elliot is showing us here a a stat sheet here that is comparing what looks to be Bengals wide receivers to Elijah Moore to Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah,
over
I'm
the last
saying that
two seasons.
I'm saying that the Bengals wide receivers are sort of the reference standard for the NFL.
Ah, they're the placebo right now in this experiment.
Yeah, no, that's hard currency. That they would get maybe 1,000 yards receiving, and maybe throw in 100 yards on the ground. So that's 1,100 yards. Let's see. Let me get my cursor going here. So like 1,100 yards total yards from scrimmage. About 1.5 yards per snap. They every time that Joe Burrow throws the ball at them, on the average, they get about 9 yards per target. That's a good number. And they come down with the ball about 70% of the time when they're targeted. So those are reasonable goals for a wide receiver league wide.
I remember they got Joe Burrow throwing them the ball, so
yeah, but other
that might be different than.
There's a lot of quarterbacks that throw to wide receivers, and a lot of wide receivers that get 1,000 yards receiving. So that's kind of a good reference. But I
would dare to say that Joe Burrow is better than Zach Wilson. I'm just putting that out there.
Well, yeah, there is no 1,000 yard receiver on the Jets that I can think of. But okay. But anyway, let's just talk about what we've got going on here. Elijah Moore had a decent year in 2021. He had 592 yards and didn't take that many snaps. He played a little bit more than half a season. Mm-hmm. His catch percentage is not really that great, and his yards per target is not that high. So he wasn't.
So you're looking
going
at
out and
catch percentage.
Bombed.
Hold on, Elliot. Let's read these out. You got a catch percentage of 55%, 7 yards a target, about 1.2
yeah, he's getting
yards
short
per
passes. Short passes, not bombs. Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right. Anthony Schwartz is kind of the same way, and he's not coming down with it very often at all. Only 43% of the time.
That's his catch percentage.
Yeah, down here is catch percentage, and he's also not making too many yards per target. 6 and 5 last year. Mm-hmm. What's interesting though is he did get some yards on the ground, and so he's actually getting some reasonable yards from scrimmage, mm-hmm. And so he actually looks not that bad on paper because he got good rushing yards. So
right, Anthony Schwartz was that gadget player that probably Elijah Moore is going to do the same thing. But go ahead, Elliot. What are you telling us with this chart?
So
bring the chart home bring it home for us, Elliot. What's the chart telling us?
The point is that these guys, Elijah Moore doesn't have a huge amount of evidence saying that he's going to be like the 1,000-yard receiver that we hope he's going to be. But we in the Browns fan base, we thought, oh my gosh, we've got this superstar wide receiver. He's a 4-3 guy, but he didn't really catch that many deep passes when he was a Jet. He didn't hang on to that many short passes. So I think there's still a burden of proof that we need to, we need to find out about him. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen everything that we need to see to really feel confident that he's going to be that breakout star. So I think we're taking a chance on him is not a sure thing. That's what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I guess to compare it to what you're looking at with a second-round pick, what are you going to even get that out of a second-round pick out of this year's NFL draft? And I'm not sure you're going to. So I do think that if you can corral some of his off-the-field issues, which if you haven't looked that up, you should.
Yeah.
If you can corral that. Go ahead, Elliot.
Yeah, you're taking like 2 bullets and you're wanting to fire twice and seeing if you can hit the target once. It's not like this is a sure thing and we're going to have Cedric Tillman and he's going to be a sure thing. We're hoping that one out of the 2 might fill that role of the speedy wide receiver. And then there's Anthony Schwartz, maybe he'll come through, but it's not like any of these guys are really sure things. We're just going to really take chances and hope that some guy comes through that we don't whiff on all 3. That's really.
I think if you have to look at the upside between, say, Elijah Moore and Anthony Schwartz, I'm going with Elijah Moore. He had a great catch percentage, from what I understand, in college. Now, maybe some of this catch percentage has to do with the fact that he has, a Jets quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to him, which fill in the blank who that could be. The quarterback play has been less than stellar over there in New York. If you put him in the right spots, right? Like, sounds like he and Anthony Schwartz have been used in a very similar way. Close to the wide receiver, close to the line of scrimmage, wide receiver screen, short passes, and let him use that speed to run. The Browns need a guy like that. Need a guy like that who can actually do it, and Anthony Schwartz hasn't been that guy. So to give up a second-round pick to grab that guy, to me, is a smart chance to take. I mean, it's all a crapshoot. You know that, right, Anthony?
Yeah, we didn't actually.
Right, Elliot, that's what it is.
We traded it for a 3rd-round pick, so it was not that much draft capital that we gave up.
It makes me wonder what the Jets were trying to get rid of.
We're running out of time, but the one other comment I wanted to make is that we were talking about this before the show, that Marquise Goodwin, although he didn't play that much for Seattle, actually put up very strong numbers in the limited amount of time that he did spend on the field. That he's the guy that really made the impressive long gainers consistently. And so he might really be the speed demon if he can kind of work around Father Time somehow at the age of 32 and still maintain his deep threat ability. He really had the numbers to prove that he could fulfill that role.
Right. He's played the last couple of years in that Shanahan style offense, that wide zone kind of wide receiver offense, wide zone, wide receiver 2, speed, deep threat that opens up all the stuff underneath. And you only have to hit those guys once or twice a game for them to be effective. So if he can run 2 deep routes and catch 1 or 2 of them, and maybe run 7 or 8 of them, but catch or even get the ball thrown to him twice, he's successful. So you drag him on the field, you put him on a deep crosser, or you put him on a fly route, and throw it to him once in a while, and that's just enough to keep defenses honest. So, Elliot, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. So, any parting shots?
Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk about Isaiah Weston, who was the surprise of summer camp last year. We still have him. He's 6'4" and runs a 4.4 and caught everything, including COVID last year. He's
nice,
extremely fast, very physical. The only thing that we can have against him is that he's 24 years old and he got injured last season, but man, did he look good last season.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up for us. So everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Football, Philosophy, and Rocket Science, a Cleveland Browns podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to give a listen. You can follow Joel on Twitter at The Left Guard and Elliot at The Village Elliot.